Okay, this is just a test. Hi, I'm John Foran. I'm in Santa Barbara, California, speaking to you in East Anglia today at this wonderful conference of yours. I want to thank the organizers for accommodating a presentation, a remote presentation in this way. And I want to recommend it as a model to academics who are invited to give talks in view of the climate crisis itself, which is our subject matter. And it's simply that it doesn't seem justifiable anymore, knowing what we now know, to actually fly somewhere to give a 15-minute talk. And so I really appreciate it when conferences accommodate this request, and not everybody's doing that yet, and so congratulations for being ahead of the curve on that. I also want to put it in everybody's ear the idea that it's possible to hold an entire conference this way, and my colleague Ken Hiltner and I have been doing this for 5 years now at UC Santa Barbara, where we teach. You can go look for conferences that we've done in the past, all to do with climate issues, at the website of the UCSB Environmental Humanities Initiative. And there's quite a lot to be said for the advantages of doing this work in this way, working in this way. In fact, for the Q&A which will follow this, it may be possible for me to be with you over Zoom or Skype. But I'd also like to suggest that you go look for this talk on YouTube and engage in a Q&A there in the comment section, and we'll see what's possible, what comes up, and indeed I think we'll model how it's a great alternative to a conventional Q&A in a session like this one. Okay, so I'm a scholar activist. I'm a professor of sociology and environmental studies at UC Santa Barbara, and for 10 years my work has centered around questions of the climate crisis, how we are confronting it, particularly as academics and as activists interested in climate justice. And of course, we have the wind behind our sails in the past year or so with the rise of Sunrise, of Extinction Rebellion in the UK and elsewhere, Sunrise in the United States, and increasingly sophisticated discussion and process around questions of the importance of an inner transition and an inner kind of resilience in this work, the importance of acknowledging the emotions that we may feel about the scheduled end of the world, let's put it that way. And this is informing our activism and our scholarship in new and exciting ways. And I locate or situate myself within some of this work. I'm very interested in contributing to it and being part of networks and creating new networks and new connections among scholars and activists who want to do this work. So this is a moment. We are really in a moment that I think we can feel good about for a change, and try and build into something lasting and powerful. Well, my talk, I don't have the title in front of me. Let me begin by acknowledging or signaling that we're not just in a simple climate crisis. We are in a set of interlocking crises, a kind of triple crisis, both including the global economic crisis that is caused by neoliberal capitalist globalization, signaled most horrifically by the obscene amounts of inequality within and between nations that globalization as we know it, has generated. Attending that, a political crisis signaled by a lack of confidence of publics wherever there are existing formal democracies, lack of support for the existing parties, a feeling that no party in any part of the political spectrum is up to the task that we face. And that's of course led to the rise of right-wing authoritarian neo-fascist, might not be too strong a word to put on it, in places like Brazil and the United States in particular. And thirdly, I think we're in a kind of culture of violence crisis that refers to the sort of embeddedness of violence in every aspect of our lives, from our most intimate interpersonal relationships to the militarism of nations led by the United States around the world. And that's the triple crisis: economic, political, cultural. And now we have, of course, the wild card of the climate crisis exacerbating each of these, deepening the connections and the acceleration of these crises. And that's the situation that we're in. That's the situation that we will be facing going forward, and that we have to respond to. So I'm a scholar of movements for radical social change. These would include 20th century social revolutions, which I've spent a good part of my career studying the causes of, and now the 21st century movements for radical social change, such as the global justice movement, Occupy, the Arab Spring, and the global climate justice movement. These movements differ from those of the 20th century in some interesting and hopeful ways. They are nonviolent on the whole. They are non-hierarchically organized in many cases. And they are looking at sort of trying to overthrow or to change, transform whole systems through innovative, cultural, strategic, and visionary means. One of the concepts that's been very useful in my own work on all of this, from the 20th century social revolutions in places from Mexico, Cuba, Nicaragua, Iran, China, and the 21st century revolutions, which I just referenced, is something I call political cultures of opposition. And I don't think any of these great movements and attempted social transformations have been able to gain any traction without a vibrant political culture of opposition that is a widespread sense among many in the population that they can articulate the nature of the crisis, the problems that they face, whether that's in terms of formal ideologies such as socialism, nationalism, democracy, or more popular idioms, everyday language around things like justice, dignity, catastrophe now. And I think that it's the elaboration of an effective and vibrant political culture, or cultures of opposition, that has enabled the coalitions to form that have made all of these big movements. Equally important to a culture of opposition, which is a way of understanding the problem and bringing people together around it, is what we might call a political culture of creation. And that, of course, refers to the sort of proactive, forward-looking visions that inspire us, inspire activists and social movements, their sense of an attractive future that would be better than the circumstances in which they exist or we now exist. And I think this is very, very important on all kinds of levels. It's an important part of what motivates people to come together despite all the odds and the pushback, the repression, the inevitable difficulties and disappointments of this work. And of course, it provides not a blueprint or a roadmap, but a set of goals really toward which to strive, and that can help us get from here to there. The idea that I've come to be most interested in, and the one that I talk about the most now, is the notion that these social movements by themselves are not going to overthrow the systems that they are facing, nor will political parties, which I've already referred to, even though we have some dynamic and progressive sort of left and green left parties, including some new formations like Podemos in Spain in particular, which I'll return to. Nor will be the building of alternatives at the local level, such as the transition town movement, the eco-village movement, the degrowth movement, and others from the global north and the global south, but that the creation of what we might call a new kind of political party, not just another new party, but a new kind of political party in the sense that it grows directly out of these movements, on the one hand, in civil society, and out of the local experiences, the sort of positive cultures of creation that are taking place, bubbling up from below everywhere. And that such a party, should it have and owe its origins to these forces, might be able to contest for power in democratic settings, and might be able to overcome the kind of almost inevitable complications of revolutionary movements to date by remaining democratic, remaining responsive to their social bases. In fact, in a way that's unprecedented in history, even as we have sort of hints or glimpses of this in parties such as Podemos, which arose in Spain, of course, out of the occupations of 2011, and other local social movements from below. We have also the pink tide governments in Latin America, which are certainly on the ebb, waning now. In Venezuela, in an awful crisis in Venezuela, having been reversed electorally in Ecuador, and still in power in Bolivia, but enmeshed in a set of critiques and contradictions in the Bolivian movement towards socialism, still driven by fossil fuel extractivism, and having sort of turned its back on the social movements, including many of the indigenous movements that brought it to power in the first place in 2005 and 6. So I think this is an idea worth discussing as a potential practical action that can be taken by members of society, and would need to be undertaken in many places. And I think it could happen. I think we've got those kinds of movements, the global climate justice movements, plural in their many manifestations, the local bottom-up initiatives. If they were to try to come together, I think we could see movement locally, regionally, and nationally, and then of course ultimately globally and internationally on in confronting the climate crisis and the attendant economic, political, and cultural crises that we face today. Thank you.